Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Pints Politics. Let's give a big round of applause for your moderator tonight, Zack Kucharski.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It's been a busy week. Obviously, it seems to never end, and we'll get to some of the topics fresh in the news today in a few minutes. But we want to start out with a couple words. I want to first say thanks to the Olympic Southside Theater. We're happy to be back here. Love this venue, and it's a great space. Also, I was impressed to see all of the holiday lights already outside. It makes me feel behind at home. I also want to thank supporting sponsor Star Entertainment for their help in pulling this off. And our presenting sponsor, the Cedar Rapids Area Association of Realtors. And here to say a few words is Jay Whitaker. So Jay.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Jay Whitaker. I'm the incoming president for 2026 for CRAR. I'm representing over 800 members of the Cedar Rapids Area Association of Realtors, or CRAR. And CRAR is proudly partnered with the Cedar Rapids Gazette to bring you Pints Politics tonight. I want you to know that I'm not only a realtor, but my wife Molly and I are subscribers to the Gazette, and we read it daily. Yes, it's important. So why is it important for CRAR members, for CRAR and its members, to partner with the Gazette and bring you tonight's Pints Politics? Well, I see it as a natural fit of both of our organizations, who are deeply invested in the strength and the future of our communities. Realtors and journalists share a common purpose, helping people stay informed, engaged, and connected to the place that they call home. CRAR and its members are deeply involved in the political process because decisions are being made in city halls, state houses, and Washington, D.C. that affect the people that we serve. From property taxes, zoning, interest rates, infrastructure, environmental regulations, fair housing, and affordable housing. Those are some of the issues that we were dealing with. Being involved ensures that our voice and the voice of homeowners, small business owners, and community builders is heard. Understand that realtors are here to protect your private property rights, promote our smart growth, and support policies that make Cedar Rapids in eastern Iowa a great place to live, work, and invest. And my belief is that journalism is vital to a strong democracy and a healthy community. For over 100 years, the Gazette has been keeping us informed, holding our leaders accountable, and shining a light on the issues that matter most to Eastern Iowa. Just like CRAR, they are part of the foundation that keeps our communities thriving. So tonight, as we enjoy good company, good conversation, and maybe a pint or two, let's remember, civic engagement does matter. It is the foundation of a strong community. Thank you, and thank you for visiting.
Thank you, Jay, and thanks to the Cedar Rapids Association of Realtors. We appreciate the partnership, you were not a paid spokesperson, but I appreciate the very kind words there. One of the other things that we want to talk about, schools. And so we're going to kind of transition one of the key issues that was on the ballot this week. We have a few guests tonight, and so wanted to talk a little bit, kind of a retrospect of the bond issue that was in front of voters, as well as the school board elections this week. And so joining tonight is Cedar Rapids School Board President Cindy Garlock, our K-12 education reporter Grace King, who spent a lot of time covering these issues. Ron Corbett, who is Vice President of Economic Development at the Metro Economic Alliance, but also one of the co-chairs of Believe in CR Schools. And so spent a lot of time there. And Grace, maybe you could kick us off and give a little recap. You spent Tuesday night covering this issue. What kind of take us through that?
What we saw Tuesday night was the $117 million Cedar Rapids school bond referendum fail by only 165 votes. It was a tough loss. I was there as the precincts were being reported, and as we were waiting for the last two precincts, Ron, Dr. Grover, people who have been working on this campaign for a year and really, I think 2 years, were trying to kind of keep the faith. I also think we need to look at this historically. This bond referendum has been coming for 3 years. We started in 2022 with a proposal for a possible $300 million school referendum, and that work was taken over by our superintendent, Dr. Grover, and just 6 months later, a different proposal was taken to voters, and that obviously in November 2023 also failed. I know, Ron, you'll talk about this, but we saw a huge shift Tuesday night in voters. They did support the bond very differently than they did 2 years ago. And school leaders want to keep that momentum. I don't think the reason the bond failed is because the plan was wrong or that the community didn't believe in this plan. I think there are other factors at play here. People are concerned about student achievement, about behavior in schools, and they're concerned about the historical challenges leadership has faced in the district. Dr. Grover told me this week that there have been 5 superintendents in a decade. That's a lot of turnover and a lot of different strategies. So I think from here on out, the district is trying to find a strategy forward that is more cohesive than they've had before.
All right, well, we'll ask some of the folks in front of us here. So Cindy, Ron, I don't know which of you wants to go first in kind of talking about when you look at what do you take away from Tuesday night and kind of those initial reactions to the data.
Well, thank you, Zach. Thanks for having me here. I notice everybody clapped for Cindy, everybody clapped for Grace, nobody clapped for me. Oh, there you go. I said, my wife didn't even clap for me. I thought, oh, this is a hostile environment. I said, I'm at home. It's a hostile environment at home. Let me just kind of level set this for everyone that voted. Thank you for voting. Do you know that more people attended the market after dark than voted in the election on Tuesday? So here you are mixing politics and pints. I assume the pints refers to alcohol. Maybe we have to give a pint when they show up at the precinct, pints and precincts. But more people voted, less people voted than attended the market after dark. So I think from a societal standpoint, we really need to work harder to get people to have their voices heard on election days. So what happened on Tuesday is more people voted on Tuesday than previous 2 years ago. So we were able to get a few more people. The school district received 59.3%, 59.3%. But in Iowa, you need 60%. My mom's in a care facility. I went to visit her this afternoon, late afternoon. I walked in. There's a couple of ladies that I always say hi to in the morning. And when I'm over there and she said, hey, congratulations on getting the bond issue. It passed. I said, no, it didn't pass. She goes, well, it got like 59%. I said, you're right, it did, but we need 60. She said, why do you need 60? And I said, well, it's an old law in Iowa where you need 60%. But what does 59.3 mean? So I was doing a little research today, Zach, and I was trying to figure out what about other people, like people that run for office, elected officials. Have any of them achieved 59.3%? Because when an elected official gets 59.3% of the vote, they'll stand up at the podium and they'll start using words like landslide. They'll start using words like mandate because they're not required to get 60%. Chuck Grassley, the longest serving senator in Iowa, never received 59.3% of the vote in Lynn County. Neither did the first female governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds. She never received 59.3. Ashley Hinson, our congressperson, she never received 59.3 out of Lynn County. Dave Lopesack, former congressman from Lynn County, from Mount Vernon, he got 58.63. Our favorite son, Chet Culver, from Lynn County, got 58.57% of the vote. The only person that got over 60% of the vote was a guy named Barack Obama. He ran for 2008. He got 60.01, 60.01. But the next time he ran, he only got 59.01. So there's only been one politician, major politician, that's received over 59.3% of the vote. So tonight, Zach, this isn't an autopsy of what's going on in the school district. It's more of a postmortem of what we can be doing right, more from a school district standpoint or from a campaign. And even the casino of several years ago only got 55% of the vote. So I am really thankful to the people that came out on Tuesday to really show their overwhelming support for the administration, for the school board, and for the schools, families, the kids, the teachers and staff of Cedar Rapids. We were just 165 votes away from issuing bonds. So I don't get all this negative from people that's saying that this is the end of public education, the end of Cedar Rapids community school districts. Actually, I think, Zach, the support was so strong. I think the school district and the board can use this as a rebirth of the Cedar Rapids Community School District. And I think the next time we put this up for a vote, it's going to pass. And I say that because the last time people said, well, they need to do this differently. They need this differently. Cut the plan, cut the amount, focus on the historic buildings. And the school district listened. And they made all those changes. And that's why we saw the huge improvement, Grace. So now we just got to make a few more. It doesn't have to be major, but a few tweaks. We can do two things. We can go get 80 people that voted no and get them to switch, 80 people, or we can try to go out and get 170 people that didn't vote, that were yes votes, to come out and vote, or a combination of both. But I think what Dr. Grover and her team are doing is amazing. And I like what Cindy and her team are doing, how they've listened over the last 2 years. So let's just listen again over the next several months, what people have to say, and get this passed the next time. That's what I'm thinking.
Thanks, Zack and the Gazette, for having us tonight. I echo much of what's already been said. I do, like Ron said, this is not doom and gloom. Yeah, we didn't get to our 60%, but we moved the needle 20 points from the last time. That's big. That's huge. And as Ron said, there were elections happening across the country on Tuesday night. Those were landslides. Those were, surprisingly, overwhelmingly wins for some candidates, but none of them got to 59.3%. So while, yes, we want the best facilities for our kids, we're getting there. I think if nothing else came out of this, we had a lot more people engaged with public schools. They are paying attention to what's happening. In the past, oftentimes local elections just fly under the radar. No one pays any attention. A few people turn out to vote. We are getting folks in the community more invested in what's happening in their schools. So that's a really positive thing to come out of this. We had a lot larger turnout this time than we did 2 years ago. So there are a lot of positives, and I encourage all of you to continue to be involved in the schools here. Come to school board meetings. Know who your school board members are. Reach out to them if you have a question or a concern. Our schools are a reflection of our community, and that's us. So we have a responsibility to our schools to give our kids the very best. We'll regroup. We'll look at the data. We'll see if we can find those 65 voters to no voters to change. We'll look at the precincts where we've got more work to do. And we will turn out the vote the next time, and the next time we'll get it over 60%. Confident of that.
I wanted to ask. Last time around, there was a lot of effort to kind of do large scale surveying and a lot of detail. What do these next couple months look like from a look back at the data? I mean, obviously, the next time this can go on the ballot, it's a bit more complicated to get people's attention in a midterm election. And so what
Well,
is the?
yeah, let's talk about that. So the state law only allows the school districts to put ballot elections on general elections. So next general election is November of next year, 12 months away. But think about what we have as the citizens to decide. We're going to have a new governor's race. Estimates that both campaigns will spend probably 25 million. We're going to have an open Senate seat. Estimates that could be over 100 million. And we're going to have an open congressional seat. So it's really going to be hard for the school district and the campaign to punch through at a time when all those other campaigns are spending millions and millions of dollars. So that's a big consideration that the school districts have. But if you wait till 2027, do you lose a little bit of the momentum that we built up over the last 6-9 months, waiting another 24 months? And the reality is the school district is in a bind. They have facilities for 18,000 kids and only have like 14,000 kids. So they can't keep piecemealing things together forever. So if the citizens really don't want to make these investments, then they're going to have to go to much tougher choices from a board standpoint to start closing more schools. And that really honestly is too painful. I don't want to see that. And I'd rather see, we're sponsored today by the Realtor Association. These are the folks that, sell homes. Ask any of them, is it easier to sell a home in a neighborhood where you have a good school or a new school or a remodeled school? Or would you want to sell a home where the school is closed? And they'll all tell you it's a lot easier to sell a house where it's around school. So some difficult decisions to make here, Zach. The Gazette can weigh in on that. Public forums like this, can weigh in on it. I think the school district is really open to what do we do next from the vote? Do we keep the same package? I looked at some of the precinct results as Cindy has. I think we have a lot of opportunity on the west side. A lot of the west side precincts were supportive, but at 53% or 54% or 55%. And I think some of the Kennedy precincts were a little lower than what I maybe thought. I thought, well, with Kennedy on the ballot, that will help drive up, voter support. But there was also nothing on the ballot or any type of solution for the middle schools on the northeast side. There was a solution, that was the new building, but the school district took that out. So I think maybe some of the middle school parents were thinking, well, we're happy about Roosevelt, we're happy about McKinley, but what about Harding? What's going to go on with Harding? So again, this analysis that Cindy's talking about, maybe formal polling, but probably more neighborhood meetings and just having gatherings like this and inviting people to come and share is probably the best way.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things going forth is to make sure that we're getting correct information out to our voters. I know the Gazette has done a really nice job of covering public schools in the area and getting that information out about the needs that our students have and our buildings have. There's a whole segment of the community that we're not reaching, however, and many of you know that I'm politically active, but even in my circle of friends who I think are engaged and well informed, had a lot of misinformation about this bond. And so it's incumbent on us as a school board and as a district to make sure that we find avenues to communicate with everyone in the community. I think for me personally, that's a really big deal, to make sure we've got correct information, that everyone has access to accurate information. So for me, that will be a big thing coming up.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said about Harding. I think families are concerned about taking Harding out of that neighborhood, a school out of that neighborhood. And we just need to help them understand that a lot of the neighborhoods that border Harding are actually in the Linn-Mar Community School District. We have to talk more about if these community schools are sustainable for school districts. And what I hear from school districts is that they're not. Schools just don't have the funding that they did. 50, 70 years ago, when a lot of these schools were built to sustain these buildings. They need larger buildings where more students are congregated, so that they can meet their needs, and still maintaining those small learning environments through what they call neighborhoods or pods, where there's a hallway that, serves only the 4th grade, for example. But you can't maintain 3 extra facilities just to have them near houses. And maybe we need to look into this more at the Gazette, but a lot of kids don't walk to school anymore anyway. So, and that would also require more funding for busing, possibly.
Cindy, I wanted to ask, after an election, you've got 3 newcomers that are joining the board, and I think there's an orientation or a work session even tomorrow morning to kind of get some orientation, and here's the role that you've now been elected to do. But I also, when you look at some of the newcomers, there is some experience there, and sometimes you wait a while, to kind of get your wings under you as a new board member, to get into a leadership opportunity. How do you reflect on kind of the makeup of the board, the roles within the board, and do you see an opportunity where you could have maybe one of the newcomers step in to help, if there are concerns publicly about, are we listening to all of the members of the board, or how are you thinking about that right now?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to working with the new board members, and you're exactly right. We do have a new board member orientation tomorrow morning. It's something new that we're trying this time around. I know that those of us who've been on the board felt really overwhelmed in the beginning. You walk into that first meeting, you're sworn in, and you have to start voting on things just like that. Along with all of the regulations and the laws and open meeting concerns, there's a lot to learn. So that was sort of the impetus for this orientation tomorrow, to just get people started thinking about the things they need to know for that first official meeting. There is absolutely nothing in our board policy that would prevent any newcomer from being in a leadership position. Leadership is elected by the board members. So if a new board member can make the case that their leadership meets the moment and the board agrees with that, then we vote, and whoever wins. So I think we have 3 people coming on the board with various backgrounds, bringing some new perspectives, and I'm really excited to work with them and see where this leads us. I think we are ready for some new voices on the board, some new ideas. I think it's clear that status quo isn't going to work for our students and this community. We are concerned about student learning, student behavior. We have a plan. Dr. Grover has outlined a very good plan for the next few years to address some of those things. But our students can do better, and they will do better. And we need a board who is willing to show leadership to guide us in that direction.
I wanted to ask just kind of a follow on that point. Obviously when you're talking about a bond referendum, that becomes a focal point, or just, you kind of are cautious about the items that maybe get a lot of attention at the board table, and or you're at least cognizant of that. Do you think, that focus on student achievement is something, you can't ignore that. And so, you can't be in permanent trying to get bond approval. Do you see that, being a focus of the board in the coming year? And how do you balance those 2 needs?
Yeah, so in preparation for tomorrow's orientation, I'm just doing a little reading myself to be up to date on everything, and just think about what the high points are for our new folks tomorrow. And really, always for the school board, it comes back to student learning. That's what it's all about. Everything else is ancillary to student learning. What do we put in place to improve student learning? Obviously, new facilities Modern facilities, accessible facilities, safe facilities help students learn. I mean, there is actual research that tells us that. So that's one piece of a big puzzle. Having highly effective teachers in every classroom, another really big piece of that puzzle. So the role of the board is to figure out all of those pieces of the puzzle. How do we do that when state funding is not keeping up with inflation, when we have ESAs that are taking money away from public schools, when we have charter schools coming into our area? How do we remain effective in providing options to all of our students so that Cedar Rapids Community School District is the choice for our families? And it's a big puzzle, but facilities, one part of the entire puzzle.
Ron,
I think Grace wanted to jump in real quick, and then
Well,
I'll close.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. The board had a work session about a month ago, talking about how they can have more discussion at the table, how you can be more transparent in your decision making. I attend a lot of school board meetings, and some boards call on each member before they make their decision for them to give comment about why they're making the decision they're making. How do you hope to foster that on the board as you bring on these 3 new members?
Yeah, that's interesting. We have actually had some thoughts about that. And I think this is an excellent opportunity with 3 new board members coming in to maybe reset how we conduct our board meetings. There is in the community some concern about transparency. We hear that. We want to address that. All of our votes are made in public. That is by law. And yeah, maybe if we took more time at the board table to make sure everyone feels like their voice is heard, that would be helpful. I would say when we conduct our meetings, every board member always has the right and the opportunity to ask for discussion around an item. And that's never been discouraged ever in my 6 years on the board. If someone wants to have a discussion before we vote, that is always allowed and never discouraged. But yeah, I think exactly, I watch some of the other school board meetings too for fun. And yeah, and yes, they do sort of go down the line and ask everyone for their thoughts on an issue. And I'd certainly be open to that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. And when I was mayor, I had this guy come up to me and he said, "You know what I like about you?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Well, thanks." But Cindy will say, I always walk up to Cindy and I say, "You know what I like about you, Cindy?" And she would say, "What?" I said, "You're never willing to ask somebody to do something not willing to do yourself." So that's the way she is. And just listening to her tonight, I can tell she's a lifelong learner. She's not stuck and say, "Well, this is how we've done it and this is how we're going to do it." She says, "We're open to changing and doing some adjustments." So that's a good thing. Thank you for saying that, Cindy, because I know you believe it. And I know the rest of the board does. And I know Dr. Grover and her team does too. So continue to listen to what people have to say. Let's not put too much focus on, some of the negative. I mean, there's some extremely negative comments, run Dr. Grover out of town. Why would we want to do that? We've had 5 superintendents in 10 years. That's probably one of our challenges. There's been no stability. It took Jeff Pomerantz, who's our city manager, 2 or 3 years just to get his team together and hit his stride. It took Marty Lenz, the director of the airport, a couple years to put their team together and hit their stride. Doesn't Dr. Grover deserve the same grace and space as those 2 people did? I think so. So let's address some of the concerns that the voters have on the transparency and trust. Let's motivate ourselves I worked my butt off, but I still got more to give. And let's get more people involved in getting this passed the next time and take care of our facilities, because Cindy's right. They got to become the school district of choice. And I don't know who coined that, Scott Trasinski, or maybe it was Dr. Grover or somebody, but that's right, the school district of choice. And it's a dual thing. It's buildings and it's the outcomes. And I think the school district is on the right path for both of them. And why I was disappointed Tuesday, I was also elated to see 59.3% of the people come out and give their support for the Cedar Rapids school system.
All right. Well, I think that's a good pin to put in the conversation for tonight. Thank you to Cindy, thank you, Grace, and thank you, Ron, for joining us here. We will transition into our game of one word here with our panel in a second. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're going to jump right into one word. And so the way this works, I'm going to introduce quickly tonight's panel, and then we'll jump into the game. So joining us tonight are two staples and one blast from the past. And so we have Adam Sullivan, former Gazette columnist, sitting in the center. To his left is Deputy Des Moines Bureau Chief Tom Barton. And to his right is our opinion page column editor and columnist, Todd Dorman. And so welcome, guys. For those that maybe haven't been here in a while, the way we do this is a one word or number or kind of very brief reaction to a topic. And then we'll give you a couple seconds to write something down, and then we'll have you explain your answers. And so the first one tonight is on the national specter. Got a lot of attention. One word that describes your reaction to the demolition of the East Wing of the White House for the creation of a presidential ballroom. We have three. If you guys want to hold up your answers. Todd, I'm going to start with you because that's not a word, it's a number. 1812. Tell me.
That's the last time a monarch tried to destroy the executive mansion during the War of 1812. So it happens, it just happens.
Yep. Okay, so Adam, I think I saw insufficient. Tell me more. You want to hold your mic up? Sorry. There you go.
Okay. I would just knock the whole thing down. Abolish the federal government and the presidency.
Well, that's no small point of view there. And Tom, you had overkill. Tell me more.
Yeah, so different presidents, different presidencies have, left their own mark on the White House. There have been other presidents who have made changes to the White House. What's so concerning and startling about this is just the scope of it, right? And so I said overkill because, instead of making updates, modernizing the East Wing just to kind of tear it down, bulldoze it, right, without any kind of consideration for, approval of Congress, for realizing that, look, this is the people's house. Maybe there should be some sort of input into this, and then to disregard kind of the historical significance and context of just completely demolishing an entire wing of the White House. That's why I went with overkill.
I think that ballroom though is going to be large enough to host the Trump Bowl. It's going to be one of the new bowl games. It's going to be part of the playoffs.
All right. Not sure where to go with that one on the joke, so I'll just go straight, play it straight with the script. One bit of news today, Kim Reynolds announced her Iowa 250 committee. And so there were a lot of state department heads, and I think Chris Knoyer, Lieutenant Governor Knoyer, is going to be the chair of the committee. But one thing you would like to see in the celebration of the 250 from Iowa, what do you think would be a good event there? So we'll have you hold up your answers as soon as Tom is done. But why don't we give Tom a little more time, and then Todd, why don't you explain UFC?
Well, if it's good enough for the president's house, I guess it's good enough for Iowa to have a UFC fight right here. Throw down right at the state fair, maybe, and then the winner has to wrestle the big boar. I think is the next. That's the ultimate challenge. So.
All right, Adam, you went with. Did you keep porn?
Todd's is better than mine. I don't have anything good, but corn. It's corn. It's Iowa.
All right.
All right,
It took a little while, but you've got a good one.
I know, and I cheated. It's actually 2 words. It's Butter Reynolds.
A hyphen will always work. Tom, I really do have to ask, you want to see that or you don't want to see that? All right.
I don't know.
The world's biggest baked potato.
I was under the gun and I couldn't think of anything, and that was the first one that popped into my mind was the butter sculpture, and then
Fair. Didn't want to razz you too hard. All right. So we've been seeing a lot of states redrawing political maps in the last few weeks. It was on the ballot, obviously, this week in California. There's been an effort in Texas. Indiana's talking about doing it, and the Illinois Governor Pritzker was responding, with a threat that if Indiana does it, Illinois is going to do it. What's a one-word reaction to all of these sudden cartography projects that we're seeing across the country? All right, that was a quick one. So hold them up. And then Adam, why don't we start with you? Predictable.
I think we're just kind of, the past 10, you could even go back a little bit further. And there's other periods of American history like this, where we're basically in a political arms race, where if one party does something, the other party will do it. And either party, honestly, in both cases, there's, on this issue and other ones, there's arguments about who started it or whatever that I don't think are really clear or conclusive. And so I think it's just I think that's just part of our politics for the time being. I don't really see a good remedy for that.
All right, Todd, you went with cheating. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but
Well, yeah, this isn't the way elections are supposed to work. People are supposed to vote with others who live in their area. That's what a district is meant to be. Same situated voters voting for representatives instead of snaking along the interstate for 50 miles. It's just, I don't care which party does it either. It's just, it flies in the face of, what democracy is supposed to be in the country. So,
and Tom, you're with SAD. Same thoughts?
yeah, same thoughts. Echoing what Todd had to say.
Yep. Okay. Pretend we're playing one number. Today is day 37 of the federal shutdown. How many total days do you think this shutdown will last? This is the DraftKings version of Pints Politics. So, Tom, we'll start with you this time. You wrote 52. What's the logic?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a journalist and we can't do math. Why did you ask me to write a number? Anyway, I have no idea, how many days it is between now and Thanksgiving. But my thought is that, if this drags into Thanksgiving and we really start to see specifically, impacts and snarls to people's holiday travels at, airports. We're already starting to see that now. If this just continues and gets worse and starts to impact more families, once we get to Thanksgiving, if it looks like it's going to extend much more into the Christmas holidays, that I think there's going to be more pressure from Americans, from voters, for them to actually get something done, reopen the government, and kind of stop the pain that we're seeing. But maybe I'm being a little too optimistic there.
All right, Todd, you went with 420. HR is not in the room. Tell me more.
I don't know exactly when it's going to end, but I think when it finally does end, we're all going to maybe want to burn one down. So there you go.
All right, and Adam, you went with 6-7.
Todd took my idea. I'm kind of the 420 columnist, or I was at one point. And then I gathered this as a meme with the kids, so I didn't have anything else to come up with. Sorry.
So at break, you'll give us the essay answer of what 6-7 really means.
It's a low effort answer.
All right. Thanks, guys. I wanted to also ask, your reaction to President Trump's White House bathroom renovation that was revealed on social media last weekend. And so, Tom, you were busy covering other political events. I'll give you a round or a pass on this one. But Todd and Adam, what do you have? Okay, Todd, we're going to start with you. Caligula, explain.
Not one of your more successful Roman emperors. And he he had a thing probably for marble and gold bathrooms, I assume. I mean, I don't know for sure, but he seems like that kind of guy.
All right. Adam, you went with Bright.
I actually don't hate Trump's style. I'm sure that's not popular here. I think it looks fine, but I, or more accurately, my wife would not like it if we had a white bathroom floor, because there's certain mistakes that men make. And I feel like that just draws attention to them.
That may be the most TMI we've ever gotten at Pints Politics. So thank you for that. All right. This is in the breaking news category of one word. And so a federal judge in Rhode Island said this afternoon that the Trump administration must fully cover food stamp benefits for the tens of millions of Americans in November. The judge said the government failed to work quickly enough to release the funds and ordered to make payments by tomorrow. Your thoughts on this ruling in court today? Todd, the extra time, in the spirit of 420, he needs more time here. So, all right, Tom, you went with good. Tell me more.
Yeah. So, we're seeing Iowa food banks and food pantries struggling with the strain of food insecurity in the state. Even before the prospect and announcement of delayed food assistance to Iowans. And, there was real concern and anxiety about, how do we continue to meet the need and provide assistance under the guidance or the plan that the administration had put out. So the USDA, I don't know if it was end of last week or earlier this week, essentially had said that those receiving the maximum SNAP benefits would receive half of what they normally get. But because of the formula they use in the math there, that, essentially a lot of Iowans were facing this prospect of getting far less than that, getting far less than half of what they usually get, and some facing the prospect of not getting any food aid whatsoever. And so there's been a lot of consternation, anxiety, and just confusion over what's going to happen, when are these benefits going to come out, what impacts is this going to have to Iowa families, and how is Iowa's charitable food system going to be able to keep up? And so I say good because hopefully, this alleviates that and finally provides, the direct aid and relief that so many people are counting on.
All right. Adam, you went with legal. Tell me more.
I couldn't think of a great word, but what I mean to say here is that, we all know how we feel about the impact of that extension, but I think it actually matters what the president's authority is here. So, of course, I don't understand the law well enough to say whether this proceeding was correct, but I think the one thing about the Trump administration, and actually, I think pretty much all presidencies, a lot of presidencies, but in recent memory since the second Bush administration, there's a lot of elements of each of those presidencies then that test the limits of what the president's duties and powers are. And so I think it actually matters to sort this out. Can presidents do this kind of thing during? And so that's what I think is, obviously SNAP in this case is super popular. People want these benefits to continue. But I think sorting out what the law is matters as well.
And Todd, you went with a similar law. Can you hold up your mic and give us your answer on that?
When Congress appropriates money for a reason, the president doesn't just get to decide that they're not going to do that. And that's what's happened in this instance. They did put aside some contingency funding in case there was an interruption in benefits. And now the president says he doesn't want to spend it. I guess he has to now, although he's not always so keen on doing what judges say. He does this a lot. We had a TikTok law, which whether you liked it or not, it was passed by Congress and the president just kind of ignored it. So there's lots of these instances where Congress wanted one thing, president wants something else. And unfortunately, Congress just kind of sits on its hands.
All right. The last one is uniquely local. Google and Nextera reached an agreement in which Google will purchase power from the Palo facility when it comes back online, assuming it passes through all the regulatory process there. What do you make of the facility restarting? And you could go the other way of what do you make of this partnership? Adam, you're done in advance. I'll let you, you're between the beer break here in a second, so I'll have you start. Awesome. Tell me more.
I think nuclear power is great. I know people have different feelings about AI in general, but if this AI investment is what it takes to turn nuclear facilities back on, is amazing. Like it's just like such a better source of fuel than most of the other things we need. I think we need all of the above. We need probably some wind and solar. We will need fossil fuels for some time, but I think nuclear power is great. And so if even if the AI thing doesn't pan out, which kind of up in the air, like how big of a factor that'll be in our economy moving forward, it's a huge factor right now. But if that's what gets us to turn back on nuclear, potentially develop new nuclear, I think that's awesome for everybody.
All right, Todd, I couldn't see what you wrote. Did you write humor? Homer, okay. Can you hold up your mic? Because I think people will want to hear this.
Homer Simpson, one of the nation's foremost experts on nuclear power, says this is a really good deal, so I believe him, and I think we should send him some donuts or something, because that's really nice of him to weigh in.
It's pronounced nuclear.
Oh, nuclear.
In the Homer Simpson vernacular, yeah.
Oh, I'll just say atomic. I can't screw that up.
All right, and Todd, you went with positive. Bring us home and explain.
Yeah. So if you're a business, or if you're city officials in Palo and rural Lynn County and the areas around Duane Arnold, who have been, hoping and waiting for news about what will happen with the nuclear plant, if it will reopen, kind of what NextEra's path would be for restarting it, because you see the potential for economic development and jobs, then, this is encouraging or positive news for you. I'm not taking that approach. I'm just saying that if you're in that camp, this agreement, again, is encouraging and positive news for those supporters.
All right. Well, we have reached the break point. So we're going to take a quick 10-minute break if you want to refill your beverages, and then we'll be back to kind of get into the national and state politics and panel discussion. Thanks, everybody. We'll be right back. All right. We're going to start off this evening with national, as we always do with the panel discussion. And so I wanted to, obviously, this week was election day. And so I wanted to kind of get your takeaways on the national scene. Obviously, we saw some governor's races that got a lot of attention in Virginia and New Jersey, the New York City mayoral race. What do you kind of make of Tuesday night's results in the national scene? And then audience question that we got is, do you think Democrats will take this week's results and be overconfident coming into the midterms? So kind of what do you take on the national elections this week?
There were the big stories, the Virginia governor's race in New Jersey and the New York mayor's race, and all of that got a lot of attention. But being from Iowa, where we've got, we're a pretty red state right now, I thought it was interesting in places where Democrats won where they just don't normally win. Apparently, 2 Democrats were elected to the Public Service Commission in Georgia, which is like their utilities board. It's a statewide election, and 2 Democrats won. They said it was like the first time a Democrat had won statewide in Georgia since 2006, or maybe even further than that. And then there was, we had this issue in Iowa where the Republicans had a supermajority in the legislature. That meant that they had 2/3 in both chambers. They could pass appointees. They could do all the things and Democrats couldn't object. Mississippi had the same thing too, but 2 Democrats won Tuesday night, which then took away the Mississippi Republican supermajority, which that's Mississippi. You don't get much redder than that, and to have them sort of suffer a legislative setback is pretty interesting. Do any of these results mean anything for the midterms? I don't know. I saw a poll before the election talking about, wrong track, right track, wrong track, and 67% of people polled, I think it was Washington Post, ABC News, said that the country's on the wrong track. And that looked a lot like before the 2024 election, when it was bad news for the Democrats. And maybe now it's bad news for Republicans that it's still on the wrong track.
I guess my takeaway was how much economics, affordability, cost of living, the sense the government isn't working for everyday people drove voters, not just in those high-profile races in Virginia and New Jersey, but Democrats had a pretty strong showing nationally with moderates holding governor's mansions and progressives like excuse me, I'm blanking on the name. Zorhan Mandami, scoring symbolic wins in the mayoral race in New York City. I think taken together, it kind of suggests that voters are rewarding candidates who sound authentic and grounded in kitchen table issues, whether they're on the left or the center. You can kind of see the same thing emerging to some extent here in Iowa. I was with Nathan Sage, one of the Democrats running for U.S. Senate, as he wrapped up his 99 county tour. And, his whole message is, working class fighters who understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And that seems to kind of fit into what seemed to resonate nationally this week. I interviewed Nathan afterwards, and, he said he's hearing the same anxieties about healthcare, water quality, rising costs that fueled voter turnout elsewhere. And so, I don't know. I think if there's a takeaway, it's that authenticity and affordability are cutting through the noise, and that voters are tired of culture wars. They want someone who feels real and who's talking about how to make life livable again.
The only other storyline I would kind of pick up on is Virginia and New York City, of course, get disproportionate attention just because how the media markets work. But I think those races are interesting in that New York City, you have a self-proclaimed socialist who wins the mayorship of the biggest city. Virginia, you have basically a moderate. Someone who has actually been quoted as saying the Democratic Party needs to get away from talking about socialism. So one thing is I think that shows that there's no national template for Democrats to win. It's gonna be local races by local issues. But the other thing is if you are farther left, I think Mamdani is a pretty bad test balloon for trying out big government, big taxes, big spending, because New York City is in such a terrible shape right now. He's not going to have money to do any of the things he wants to do. And also a lot of that goes through Albany, right? And so I think that mayorship is going to probably be pretty disappointing for folks. But, it's a pretty decently long line of disappointing New York City mayors. So maybe they won't hold it against them. I don't know.
I wanted to talk a little bit. We hit on this earlier, but with the government shutdown, the federal government shutdown 37 days, we're starting to really see impacts to people, everywhere, whether it's the SNAP benefits, whether it's the number of air flights in the air. I think there's the 10% cut comes tomorrow. Do you think that this is going to have a heavy impact, or what do you think changes the stalemate here?
I don't really see an end in sight. I think, honestly, to most people, I think that there are not really clear effects for the shutdown in their day-to-day lives. Certainly if you're on SNAP, that's a huge effect, and there's lots of people who care about that and have compassion about that. The airline, to the extent that more and more flights are getting delayed, that might even have a bigger effect, just because that's a more politically influential group of people, to be honest. But I think this has been a really quiet shutdown. It used to be. I think you've probably all seen things on social media about the shutdowns used to be on the front page of New York Times every day they went down, and now I don't think anyone's really talking about it, and so I don't see a real clear incentive for either side to back down in the near future.
Yeah, kind of building off of my answer to the one word question. I think until we start to see, videos and news coverage, right, of, packed airports and kids crying, and families trying to go to see family members and loved ones during Thanksgiving, until we start to see, long lines and runs on food pantries and food banks. And again, more TV news coverage of, the families kind of at their wits' end about, how they're going to put food on the table. I don't know if there's going to be really much incentive, right, to try and drive negotiations or drive some sort of agreement. And, honestly, it's going to take movement in the Senate. Chuck Grassley this week, I think, said that there's some bipartisan talks that are underway. And I think he said that, quote, great progress is being made. But until both sides agree on how to handle healthcare subsidies and broader spending levels, the shutdown is going to keep rippling through every corner of the economy. And unfortunately, it's Iowa families that are going to be feeling that.
Well, and I mean, Tom's right. As we get toward the holidays, the pressure is going to mount. I mean, you're going to have people that can't fly to where they want to go. They don't have paychecks to buy their kids presents. They don't. I mean, there's just this sort of waterfall of things that are going to affect people and the way they, celebrate Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and all those holidays that require, that they're sort of bastions of consumerism. I guess it's all an Eastern Syndicate, I hear. But I think that once that starts to get closer and closer, the stories are going to get more dire. The people are going to really start to, empathize with people that are running into problems. I think in the end, they'll probably, and it won't end, they'll figure out some sort of temporary thing and, push it off into like March or something. And maybe said that there's been talk about setting a date certain to have a debate on the Affordable Care Act subsidies that the Democrats are trying to get reinstated. So I think there are no cooler heads necessarily, but I just think their political lives are going to flash before their eyes, and I think they're going to have to figure out something before we get into December.
All right. Since we were together and we did the last Pints and Politics only 3 weeks ago, so we're kind of in this tight little window of news, but luckily it's not been slow. But since we were last together, President Trump visited Asia and we've seen China purchase some soybeans. What impact are the trade tariffs having on Iowa farmers? What's the impact of the Asia trip? What do you make of the outcome there in terms of what it means back here in Iowa?
I believe one of my colleagues will disagree with me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that the deal for soybean purchases that Trump secured is like the same or like a little bit less than what the baseline has been for the last few years. Like, it's not like we got a good deal. It's basically what they've been doing. And I think that underlies one of the big issues with Trump's tariffs is they offered all these different rationales of what these are for. So it's to, rejuvenate American manufacturing. It's to raise revenue. It's to have leverage against other countries. But especially that last one, I think they're all bunk, but that last one is having more leverage against other countries. We undercut ourselves and then we're competing to get back up to where we were. And it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think the news out of Asia is kind of a mixed bag for Iowa farmers. Welcome, but far from a cure-all. China's commitment to buy roughly 25 million metric tons of soybeans a year for the next 3 years would bring purchases back closer to pre-trade war levels. But the 12 million metric tons that they plan to buy, I think, before January is still only about half a normal year's volume. So yes, it's encouraging, but as one Iowa farmer put it recently in news coverage, is it doesn't fix everything in the short term. And so farmers are still facing steep input costs, fertilizer, seed, repairs, and their bins are full after months of stalled exports. So, prices remain underwater. You've got the ongoing tariffs coupled with the government shutdown. That's adding layers of uncertainty. And it's worth noting that Iowa leaders like Senator Joni Ernst and Congressman Zack are pressing the administration to move quickly to, lift retaliatory tariffs, restore export markets, and finalize domestic fuel policies like year-round E15 to bolster demand at home. One thing that the president's Asia trip does is it helps symbolically, right? It shows dialogue is happening again, and that that's eased some of the angst. But what farmers want is follow through. They've seen big announcements before that didn't materialize. And until those soybeans are actually shipped and tariffs are fully rolled back, I think the sense across rural Iowa is cautious optimism, but I think still plenty of frustration.
Well, and if moral arguments are any guide, it looked like this week that the U.S. Supreme Court was very, very skeptical of Trump's ability to enact large tariffs like this. It did not seem like they thought he had the power to do that, which of course could have big implications whenever they get around to ruling. We may have to wait until June. But the irony of that is that the Supreme Court may save Trump, because if they make him, if the tariffs go away, the economy will probably get better, and that'll probably help him in the midterms. But that's that'll be the irony of it. But yeah, I don't think the Supreme Court's is gonna be on board with him having that singular executive authority to do something that's so far-reaching economically.
Just to pick up on one part of that, I think one point that came out during the oral arguments this week is one of the justices, I think Gorsuch, asked Trump's lawyer, like, well, could a Democratic president use this to like ban gas or ban imports of gas-powered cars or tariff them? And Trump's lawyers admitted, yes, they probably could. I think that goes back to what I said about this ratcheting up of like partisan powers is like, the next president is Trump's claiming these powers under like an emergency authority, and the next president is going to use that same authority to do things that Republicans don't like. And so this just gets into this weird, since we're not on the radio, I'll say pissing match, where like each party is just going to like keep building on what the other party has done.
All right, let's bring it closer to home and kind of talk about the gubernatorial race in Iowa. And so we're at a point now where, since we were last together, Randy Feenstra has entered the race. Rob Stand has completed his 100 public town halls. And so Feenstra had a pretty rough outing on the Simon Conway show in just a yes/no question about participating in a debate. What do you make of where the race is right now with the two kind of Feenstra, Sand, and do you see an advantage for Sand having crisscrossed the state so much?
Yeah, I do see an advantage with Rob Sands having already crisscrossed the state and completed his 100 town hall tour. So he closed his 100 town hall, and so the reason why he did 100 is because in Lee County, you have two county seats. So that's why it was 100 and not 99. But anyway, it was a standing room only crowd of about 350 people, with Republicans and independents raising hands alongside Democrats. And, he has this message of, being a fixer, of build, not just fight. Talking about the accountability work that he's doing with his PI program through the auditor's office, and talking about guardrails on Iowa's education savings accounts and water quality and fixes to Medicaid. And he's pairing, these retail stops with subject matter roundtables. So, he like AEA conversations. He was in Cedar Rapids earlier this week talking with former staff at the local area education agency, and talking about recent reforms that have been made to the AEAs and to special education services in the state, and how that's funded and handled. Earlier this week, he was also in Newton having a roundtable discussion on healthcare and affordability, which is what I hear, most in these rooms from Iowans and voters that are stopping out to hear from him. And, Republicans call it theater, fair enough, but, he'll need to keep fleshing out policy details and show how he'd work with a likely GOP legislature. But, the strategy here, lots of listening, practical fixes, a promise to veto culture war bills, it's landing with voters who say that, they're fed up and want problem solving over partisanship. And, he's getting his name out there. He's getting in front of a lot of voters. He's able to sell his message. Right now, with the delay of a figure like Randy Feenstra entering the governor's race, we really haven't seen too much pushback on that up until now.
Yeah, it seems like I haven't seen the polls if they exist, but I would assume Sand's name recognition at least is higher than Feenstra's, or at least equal. And Sands would be way higher than I assume any of the other Republicans in that primary race. And so that's kind of we haven't seen that in recent history where the Democrat candidate for governor is more well known than the Republican. And I would say that I think what Sand is trying to pitch is kind of a nonpartisan or a post-partisan like view of politics, which I certainly am like super sympathetic to. It will be interesting to see if he's elected how that would work governing, because we're in such a hyper partisan environment where like your team wants you to go for the red meat and say the party line. And maybe that's different if you're a Democratic governor in a red state with presumably it'll be a Republican legislature. So maybe he has more opportunity to like to compromise with folks, but it's been you could also see pressure on him that once he's the Democratic governor that like they want him to really like vie for those like core principles that I think probably his personal views don't have that much to do with it. I think it's more of a political calculation. And I don't know what that calculation would be.
Yeah, I've got a column Sunday. Yeah, I just keep doing it. I don't know why. But that kind of looks at the fact that it's pretty tough, especially in Iowa, to become governor coming out of Congress, because Congress is really unpopular, and people don't like things that are associated with Washington. And so if you've watched or if you've kind of followed Feenstra's first week or so, he's been having to talk a lot about congressional stuff, shutdown, SNAP, the tax cuts that he voted for. And, that I understand he's going to have to, of course, talk about that stuff as part of his record, which is an advantage that Sand will have, is that he doesn't have a voting record to go mine through. I mean, he may have made some bad decisions on audits or something, but I don't think you're going to be able to find a $4.5 trillion tax cut that Rob Sand voted for. But so I think Feenstra, his rollout was not great. He waited probably way too long. He left the field to Sand for months. And really, I guess Feenstra is the front runner, although it's a crowded field, and I don't know that he's got the oomph at this point to just kind of clear it and just sort of cruise to victory. He'll probably have more money and probably is better known, but I've noticed that there have been some evangelical voices in the Republican Party talking about Adam Steen, that they like him, the guy that kicked Krampus out of the Capitol before he could beat children and send them to hell. Yeah. So good for him. Don't let that happen. But yeah, so I don't think everybody's just kind of locked in that it's like Randy Feenstra's race to lose. I think people are still shopping around, kind of like the caucuses. People don't like to make that decision right away. They want to hear from them.
Yeah. So, I mean, to that point, is something that I think, Zach, you mentioned in your multiple part question. You mentioned the exchange that he had with Simon Conway on his radio show. So it's kind of a reminder that early campaign moments, can matter less for what's said than what they reveal. So Feenstra's hesitation on Conway's show, where he dodged a yes or no about whether he would debate his GOP rivals, played awkwardly because Conway's audience overlaps heavily with the conservative base that Feenstra needs. And he did clean it up later, telling reporters that sure, when asked if he would debate, but the exchange stood out because Feenstra's answers sounded scripted and cautious at a time when Republican voters, especially in Conway's orbit, expect kind of bluntness and confidence, right? And Conway, pushing for a simple yes or no, kind of put that on display and gave his rivals an opening to question whether Feenstra is comfortable under pressure or willing to engage head on. And, those moments of hesitation make him look like he's still finding his footing in a new statewide spotlight. That said, these stumbles usually fade if the candidate shows up and defines himself. And he's using these early stops, like his food pantry visit in Cedar Rapids, to project a compassionate conservative image tied to faith, community, and service. But as for the field, as Todd mentioned, Adam Steen now has the backing of Steve Deese, which guarantees him attention on the right. And Eddie Andrews and Brad Sherman are both well liked within their own lanes, but face fundraising and visibility hurdles. So yes, Randy Feenstra's hesitation was a little clunky, but not disqualifying. The question is whether he can, balance that kind of front runner caution with kind of the grassroots engagement that Iowa's Republican-based demand.
I don't think Randy Feenstra has a lot of experience debating. I think he's kind of skipped debates with his Democratic opponents. I really don't remember that he debated Steve King, but I could be wrong about that. But I don't think he's got a lot. And that's going to be one of those debates where when you're sort of the big target, everyone's going to come after you. And so that's going to be difficult for him. But you got to do it, because otherwise you just, you look, scared and disingenuous.
I would say Feenstra is the odds-on favorite right now, just because the field's so large. But I'm a Republican, and I'm not quite as in touch with all the Republican networks as I used to be. But I never hear from Feenstra or his people, and I do hear from some of these other candidates. And I would also say that it's interesting about this Republican race that, like, especially, is it 6 or 7 guys that are in now?
So all right, I'll go down the list. On the GOP side, you've got Randy Feenstra, Eddie Andrews, Brad Sherman, Adam Steen, and now you have Zack Lon. And then on the Democratic side, you have Rob Sand and Julie Stouch.
Well, just 5 Republicans. But what's interesting to me is, like, and in the earlier Trump years, occasionally in these big races, you'd have like one anti-Trump candidate, and it was clear they weren't going to win. These are all different flavors of Trump. Like, you could say like Feenstra and Andrews maybe are a little bit more establishment. A few of the other ones are more like Christian fundamentalists or whatever. But like now they're all just different types of Trump voters. And I think that really speaks to like the Trump takeover of the Republican Party. Like, it's complete. There's really no room. Maybe in a few fringe House races in weird districts, you could have like a Trump skeptical Republican, probably not an anti-Trump Republican, but like across the map, like you have to be pro-Trump.
Well, and I saw that today covering Zack Lon's campaign announcement in Belle Plaine, where a bunch of his supporters were wearing red and white MAGA-esque ball caps that said Iowa first. That's kind of his slogan, or his pitch is that he's running an Iowa first campaign. And so you see that heavy Trump messaging there.
Wanted to jump just in the time that we have left. Let's give a super early preview and talk about the Iowa legislature and the upcoming session in January. So it's going to be.
Can we not? I don't want to think about it.
Well, you can just recite, instead of counting sheep, you can just count the gubernatorial candidates and recite those back to us. But let's talk a little bit about what you expect to happen in the upcoming session. You've got new leadership with Mike Clemish in the Senate. It's Reynolds' last hurrah in terms of being governor and being able to set priorities to what that means. And you still have Bobby Kaufman in the House. What issues do you expect? What kind of is the atmosphere that you guys think will come in Des Moines? Is it going to be short session, long session? People just want to get out? No holds barred. The alliances of the past are gone. What do you guys make of the upcoming session?
So I should preface this saying I don't want to think about the legislative session just because it's a lot of work. It's a grind, and I've enjoyed the slower pace, right? Well, slow pace, relatively. Anyway, that so I just want to say that I'm saying that not because I'm dreading anything in particular coming out of fair. So anyway, I've heard conflicting things from different insiders and longtime observers who've been at the Iowa Capitol for a while. I think earlier this year, over the summer, I had heard some people saying that they expected that it would be a short session because Governor Reynolds is going to be a lame duck governor, and you're leading into the 2026 election, and that maybe lawmakers are going to want to get out fast so that they can get back home and focus on campaigning. And with Reynolds being a lame duck, maybe they won't be there that long. At the same time, it's going to be interesting to see, all right, how is the governor going to approach this session? Her essentially last session to really kind of make a mark and leave her stamp and kind of solidify her, for lack of a better term, legacy as governor. And anyway, in terms of issues, the big issue out there is, or the big issues out there, I should say, is eminent domain. What are they going to do about eminent domain? We saw what happened, this the past legislative session. It was a big issue that dominated the session. There was a lot of rancor over it, within the Republican Party, within the Senate Republican caucus. We eventually saw the governor, veto that bill, and then the reaction that we saw from House Republicans who, felt like this was the governor and other members of the party backing down from protecting property rights, protecting farmers. And so I don't know where that's going to go. And I don't know that we've really seen any movement to some sort of agreement between, House and Senate Republicans over how you address this issue. And then property taxes. We've heard over and over that, one of the big priorities for the governor and for Republicans is doing something on property taxes. But, they spent all this year, all this past session, trying to come up with some sort of framework over property taxes, and they couldn't really get anywhere to achieve something that that was going to be palatable to enough people and not dramatically impact local government budgets. I mean, I can't remember how many iterations of a property tax plan they ended up coming out with, and none of them could get, real traction. And it's such a complex and complicated issue. The governor and Republican leaders have been doing kind of these roundtable discussions recently across the state, talking to people about property taxes, but we haven't heard anything from the governor or these leaders as to, what they're hearing as solutions and kind of where they're going to land in terms of a plan to address that issue. And so those are two big things that I'm going to be looking or paying close attention to and are really going to, I think, end up dominating this next legislative session.
Well, and the conventional wisdom used to be if you're going to cut property taxes, you have to spread some money around local governments to sort of soften the blow from the cuts. And some of the things that they're talking about would be pretty deep cuts in local budgets, but they don't have the money to spread around right now. The revenues are declining. They're going to have to scoop reserves in the taxpayer relief fund. That's it. To make things balanced. So I don't think they're sitting on a golden egg that can make counties happy with, and cities and school districts happy with how this works. And it's like you say, it's such a complicated system that a lot of times you think you're doing something and then the bill is enacted and the law comes through and you find out that you're not doing what you thought you were doing, and you're finding out that you may have shoved the gopher down in this hole, but one popped up over here when they did commercial. Oh, the residential taxes popped up. So it's tough to do. They don't have maybe the resources to do it. I'll also be interested to see if that veto that the governor did on the carbon pipeline bill will resonate. I mean, Republicans were very angry about that, and the governor chose the ethanol industry over people's property rights, which is not surprising. I mean, that's kind of how she's operated. I mean, forget about polluted waterways. We got to protect the pork producers. I mean, that's kind of the thinking that she's had all the time she's been governor. But there may just be a lot less enthusiasm to enact anything that any sort of big idea that she comes out with this year. I don't know that there'll be the enthusiasm.
I think that pressure is only going to ramp up on the eminent domain issue because it's going to be such a prominent issue in the GOP primary for governor, right? I mean, it's one of the big things that these candidates are talking about. And so I think the pressure is only going to ratchet up on Republican lawmakers to do something. The big question is, what do you do? How do you get buy-in? How do you get agreement as to how you address that issue? One, protect property rights and protect farmers from, having their the land seized, and two, address the economic concerns from the governor and from other Senate Republicans who want to make sure that whatever legislation is tailored or comes out doesn't end up impacting other potential infrastructure projects down the line, not just these proposed carbon capture pipelines, not just the Summit project, but any other potential future utility infrastructure projects that may come down the line.
Right. Well, we have reached the end of our time here together tonight. So I want to give one last round of applause to the panel here. Todd, Adam, Tom, thank you. To Ron and to Cindy, who joined us earlier, to Grace King, and to Star Entertainment, the Olympic Southside Theater. Thank you for hosting us, and to the Cedar Rapids Area Association of Realtors. If you want to cleanse your politics palette, Christmas Trees, Festival of Trees, is coming up at Lindale Mall November 15th and 16th from 10 to 5, and November 14th is Senior Day and Sensory Day, so a lower level of sensory activity going on that day. And so check it out. It's at Lindale Mall. Thank you to everybody for being here tonight. Appreciate the conversations and have a great night. Thank you.